Welcome to our channel, the place where knowledge meets curiosity. Here, we dive deep into the wonders of history, science, culture, and mysteries that shape our world. Every video is designed to open your mind and spark your imagination. So sit back, relax, and let's begin this incredible journey together. Now, we explore, explain, the Jōmon people, art, life, and spirituality in prehistoric Japan.
In the mists of prehistory, long before the emergence of the pyramids of Egypt or the rise of Mesopotamia, a civilization began to take root in the islands of the Far East. A civilization that would, in time, come to be known as the Jōmon. The Japanese archipelago, isolated yet fertile, offered a cradle for some of humanity's earliest experiments in settled life. It was here, amid dense forests, volcanic mountains, and a climate that oscillated between glacial chill and humid warmth, that the Jōmon people crafted a world unlike any other. Their story stretches back nearly 14,000 years, a span so vast that it challenges our conventional timelines of civilization. For generations, the Jōmon were seen as primitive hunter-gatherers. Yet, as archaeologists have unearthed their settlements, tools, and enigmatic pottery, a more complex and remarkable picture has begun to emerge. One of a society that blended mobility with stability, spirituality with survival, and artistry with adaptation. The term Jōmon itself comes from the Japanese words for cord marked, referring to the distinctive patterns pressed into their pottery. When American zoologist Edward Sylvester Morse first excavated the Omori shell mound near Tokyo in 1877, he discovered shards of pottery decorated with twisted rope impressions. Little did he know, these remnants represented the earliest known pottery in the world, dating back to a time when much of humanity still roamed as nomadic foragers. The Jōmon were creating fired clay vessels before agriculture, before the construction of cities, before the rise of dynasties. In a sense, they stood at the threshold of human innovation, one foot in the old world of hunters, the other in the dawn of civilization. The origins of the Jōmon people are rooted in the final stages of the last ice age, a period of dramatic environmental transformation. As glaciers began to retreat roughly 16,000 years ago, sea levels rose, isolating the Japanese islands from the Asian mainland. Before this separation, early humans had crossed over land bridges connecting what are now Siberia, Korea, and Japan. They brought with them knowledge of stone toolmaking and survival skills honed in the harsh tundra. Over time, these populations adapted to Japan's changing environment, giving birth to a culture uniquely tuned to the rhythm of the islands. They became masters of forest and sea, developing an intricate relationship with the natural world that would define their identity for millennia. The early Jōmon lived in a landscape of immense diversity. Japan's geography offered fertile plains, rich coastal waters, and dense woodlands teeming with life. Rivers provided salmon runs, while the forests yielded nuts, acorns, chestnuts, and wild fruits. The Jōmon gathered shellfish from tidal flats, hunted deer and boar in the hills, and fished in both fresh and salt water. Archaeological sites like Sanai Maruyama in northern Honshu reveal that these early inhabitants were not mere wanderers, but settled people with semi-permanent dwellings, storage pits, and communal structures. This sense of stability was unprecedented among hunter-gatherers of the same era. It was a revolution in lifestyle, one that allowed the Jōmon to cultivate a deep spiritual and artistic connection to their world.
The Jōmon period is traditionally divided into 6 chronological phases: incipient, initial, early, middle, late, and final. Each phase represents a different stage in cultural and technological development, spanning from around 14,000 BCE to 300 BCE. The earliest Jōmon communities lived at the edge of glacial retreat, crafting simple clay vessels used for cooking and storage. Over thousands of years, these vessels evolved into elaborate works of art, with ornate designs and complex shapes that reflected not only functionality, but also aesthetic sophistication. The pottery tells a silent story, a record of a people who, though isolated from the great civilizations of the world, expressed themselves through patterns of fire and clay. In the incipient Jōmon period, around 14,000 to 10,000 BCE, Japan's climate was still cold and unstable. The people of this age relied on hunting and gathering, but began experimenting with sedentary life. Small groups built pit dwellings, semi-subterranean houses dug into the ground and covered with wooden frameworks. These provided warmth during the harsh winters and cool refuge during humid summers. Within these humble homes, the seeds of community life were planted. Archaeological evidence suggests that families shared labor, food, and ritual spaces. There was a sense of continuity, a rhythm of life synchronized with the changing seasons and the cycles of nature. By the initial Jōmon period, around 10,000 to 5,000 BCE, Japan's climate had warmed considerably, giving rise to lush forests and an abundance of resources. The Jōmon adapted beautifully to this environment, developing a diet that was both varied and sustainable. Shell middens, ancient refuse heaps filled with shells, bones, and pottery fragments, serve as time capsules of their daily existence. They reveal not only what the Jōmon ate, but also how they organized their settlements and disposed of waste. The presence of thousands of such middens across Japan speaks to a stable, thriving population. It is here that archaeologists have found evidence of long-term habitation, with communities sometimes numbering in the hundreds. This era also marks a crucial turning point in human history, the emergence of the world's earliest known pottery culture. The Jōmon were among the first people on Earth to master the art of firing clay at high temperatures. Their pots were initially simple, used for boiling foods and storing gathered resources. But even in these early stages, there was an unmistakable sense of artistry. The cord-marked patterns that give the Jōmon their name were not merely decorative, they were functional as well, helping to strengthen the clay surface and prevent slippage during use. Yet over time, as the community's life grew more settled, the designs became increasingly intricate. Spirals, flames, and abstract motifs that hint at spiritual symbolism and a deep awareness of the natural world. The Middle Jōmon period, roughly 2500 to 1500 BCE, is often seen as the golden age of this culture. By this time, the Jōmon society had developed complex social structures, trade networks, and rich spiritual traditions. Settlements grew larger and more organized, with central plazas and ceremonial areas. The Sanai Maruyama site, once thought to be a small village, has now been recognized as a vast settlement spanning dozens of hectares. Archaeologists have uncovered pit dwellings, raised storage buildings, and evidence of horticulture. It seems the Jōmon were cultivating plants such as chestnuts and gourds, though they never fully transitioned into agricultural farming. Instead, they managed their environment with remarkable intelligence, burning forests to encourage the growth of edible plants, maintaining ecological balance long before modern concepts of sustainability emerged.
Their artistic achievements during this period are nothing short of extraordinary. The flamboyant, flame-style pottery of the Middle Jōmon is among the most visually striking ceramics ever produced. Found mainly in the Niigata region, these vessels explode with energy, swirling rims and flame-like protrusions that defy symmetry and logic. They seem alive, almost breathing with the vitality of the people who made them. Some scholars interpret these designs as representations of fire, water, or fertility, elemental forces that shaped the Jōmon worldview. To hold one of these pots is to glimpse the spiritual imagination of a people who saw divinity in every corner of nature. The Jōmon were not isolated hermits on remote islands. They were participants in a web of cultural exchange that extended across East Asia. Archaeological evidence indicates contact with the Korean Peninsula, the Russian Far East, and even parts of mainland China. Stone tools, ornaments, and shell jewelry made from exotic materials such as jade and obsidian reveal networks of trade and communication. The movement of ideas and materials across the sea demonstrates that the Jōmon possessed sophisticated maritime skills. They built dugout canoes and navigated coastal waters, fishing and trading along Japan's extensive shoreline. This maritime adaptability not only sustained them, but also connected them to a larger prehistoric world. As centuries passed, the Jōmon developed a worldview deeply rooted in animism, the belief that all things, living and non-living, possess a spiritual essence. The forests, rivers, mountains, and animals were not merely resources, they were sacred entities deserving respect. This sense of harmony with nature infused every aspect of their lives, from the design of their tools to their burial practices. Archaeological discoveries of clay figurines known as dogu, small humanoid figures often with exaggerated features, provide tantalizing glimpses into Jōmon spirituality. Some are thought to represent fertility, others to serve as protective charms or ritual offerings. Many were deliberately broken before being buried, suggesting ceremonial release of spiritual energy. These figurines, along with stone circles and ritual sites found across Japan, reflect a people for whom the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds was porous and alive. The Jōmon people's resilience was constantly tested by nature's whims. Japan's volcanic landscape, frequent earthquakes, and changing climate posed continual challenges. Yet, rather than dominating their environment, the Jōmon learned to coexist with it. Their survival was based on adaptability and intimate ecological knowledge. They timed their hunting and gathering with seasonal migrations of animals, stored food to survive lean winters, and developed tools perfectly suited to their environment. The simplicity of their technology belied its efficiency. Polished stone axes, bone fish hooks, and woven nets all testify to a refined understanding of materials and function. By the late and final Jōmon periods, around 1500 to 300 BCE, signs of change began to ripple through the islands. The climate grew cooler, leading to shifts in vegetation and animal populations. New groups, likely from the Asian mainland, began arriving in western Japan, bringing with them agricultural practices and metal tools. These newcomers would eventually give rise to the Yayoi culture, whose rice farming and social hierarchies would transform the archipelago. For the Jōmon, this transition marked both an end and a beginning, the closing of a long prehistoric chapter and the dawn of a new era in Japanese history. Yet, even as their culture gradually faded, their spirit endured. The Jōmon legacy would echo through the ages, shaping the Japanese identity in ways both visible and unseen.
What makes the Jōmon story so remarkable is its duration. For nearly 10,000 years, these people sustained a stable, creative, and spiritually rich culture without the trappings of empire or conquest. They achieved balance rather than domination, continuity rather than expansion. While civilizations elsewhere rose and fell, consumed by war and ambition, the Jōmon remained steadfast in their relationship with the land. Their art, their rituals, and their settlements stand as quiet testimony to the possibility of a different kind of civilization, one that thrives not by subduing nature, but by living in harmony with it. Modern archaeological research continues to uncover new dimensions of the Jōmon world. Radiocarbon dating, DNA analysis, and advanced excavation techniques are rewriting what we thought we knew about these ancient people. Far from being a primitive society, the Jōmon appear increasingly sophisticated. Innovators in pottery, pioneers of semi-sedentary life, and custodians of a deep ecological wisdom. Their story forces us to reconsider the definition of civilization itself. Perhaps progress is not measured solely by agriculture, architecture, or written language, but by the ability to live sustainably for millennia
within one's environment. Today, Japan still carries the echoes of the Jōmon age, from the reverence for nature embedded in Shinto beliefs to the aesthetic sensibility that celebrates simplicity and impermanence. Traces of the Jōmon worldview persist in modern Japanese culture. Museums across Japan display their pottery and figurines, not as relics of a forgotten past, but as living symbols of endurance and creativity. Each shard of clay, each impression of cord, speaks to a time when humanity's relationship with the earth was still tender and intuitive. The Jōmon people remind us that civilization can take many forms, and that sometimes the most profound achievements are not carved in stone or written on tablets, but woven into the rhythms of the land itself. As the curtain falls on the first part of this story, the image of the Jōmon stands clear: a people born of isolation, sustained by ingenuity, and united by an unspoken reverence for the natural world. Their dawn was not marked by conquest or empire, but by coexistence. And in that quiet harmony, they laid the foundations for a legacy that would outlast even the mightiest of kings.
Across the green valleys and coastal plains of ancient Japan, the Jōmon people wove a way of life that balanced sustenance, beauty, and spirituality. In their hands, clay and wood became tools of expression. In their minds, the natural world was not a backdrop, but a living partner. To understand the Jōmon is to step into this delicate balance where every tool, every vessel, every fire-lit dwelling speaks to a people who found harmony in simplicity and meaning in material form. The Jōmon lived in an environment of astonishing abundance. Japan's unique geography, an arc of islands shaped by tectonic energy and seasonal contrasts, provided everything necessary for human flourishing. The people settled where forest met sea, where rivers cut through fertile plains, and where the resources of land and water could be harvested in equal measure. At sites like Sanai Maruyama in northern Honshu and Torihama in Fukui Prefecture, archaeologists have uncovered extensive evidence of Jōmon settlements that reveal not only the sophistication of their technology, but also the intimacy of their relationship with nature. These were not transient camps, but stable villages, some occupied for centuries, each with its own patterns of social organization, trade, and ritual life. A typical Jōmon settlement was a cluster of pit dwellings arranged around an open central space that served as a communal area. These houses, dug partially into the earth and roofed with thatched coverings, were insulated and practical. Inside, hearths burned throughout the year, providing warmth and a place for cooking. The smoke rising through the roof vent was more than a sign of life. It symbolized a connection between earth and sky, a thread between the human world and the divine. Around these homes, food was gathered, processed, and stored in large clay pots buried in the ground to preserve nuts, seeds, and dried fish through the changing seasons. The rhythm of life was cyclical, shaped by the migrations of animals and the ripening of plants. Men and women alike participated in hunting, gathering, and crafting, their skills finely tuned to the shifting moods of their environment. The Jōmon diet was as diverse as their landscape. Along the coasts, shellfish, fish, and seaweed were staples. Inland, rivers teemed with salmon and trout, while the forests offered chestnuts, walnuts, and acorns, foods that could be roasted, pounded into flour, or stored for winter. Deer and wild boar were hunted with skillful precision, using stone-tipped arrows and traps. These animals provided meat, fur, and bone for tools. Even birds and small mammals were part of the Jōmon culinary landscape. The people's intimate knowledge of their ecosystem allowed them to maintain a sustainable balance. They took what was needed and respected what remained. Nothing was wasted. Shell middens, those ancient refuse heaps that once puzzled archaeologists, are in fact silent archives of Jōmon diet and ingenuity. Thousands of shells, fish bones,
animal remains and pottery fragments recording millennia of ecological partnership. Yet the Jōmon were more than resourceful survivors. They were creators. Their art, especially their pottery, speaks to an aesthetic sensibility far beyond mere function. In a time when most of the world's cultures had yet to discover fired clay, the Jōmon had elevated it to an art form. The earliest vessels were simple, shaped by hand and decorated with the characteristic cord marking technique that gave the culture its name. But as centuries passed, pottery evolved into something extraordinary. The Middle Jōmon period saw the emergence of flamboyant designs, most famously the flame-style pottery of the Niigata region. These vessels, with their twisting rims and dramatic contours, appear to dance with motion. They are expressions of energy captured in clay, echoing the elemental forces that dominated Jōmon consciousness: fire, water, wind, and earth. Scholars debate their purpose. Were they ritual objects, status symbols, or expressions of communal identity? Perhaps they were all these at once. Each pot was both utilitarian and spiritual, an intersection of daily need and cosmic belief.
The process of making these vessels was itself a sacred act. Clay was gathered from riverbanks and mixed with plant fibers or crushed stone to strengthen it. The potter, often a woman, would knead the clay with rhythmic patience, coiling it upward into shape, pressing cords or sticks into the surface to create texture. When fired in open pits, the flames licked the surface unevenly, leaving natural gradients of color, browns, reds, and blacks that mirrored the earth itself. The entire process reflected the Jōmon worldview, creation emerging from cooperation with natural forces rather than domination of them. In each vessel's curves and markings, the artist acknowledged the power of earth and fire, of transformation and impermanence. Beyond pottery, Jōmon craftsmanship flourished in wood, bone, and stone. The dense forests of ancient Japan provided abundant material for carving, tools, weapons, and ornaments. Wooden spoons, trays, and figurines have been recovered from waterlogged sites, preserved for thousands of years. Their smooth surfaces and elegant simplicity reveal a refined tactile awareness. Stone was shaped into polished axes and arrowheads with remarkable precision. Obsidian, prized for its sharpness and beauty, was traded across long distances, linking communities through networks of exchange. The Jōmon also excelled in textile production, weaving plant fibers into baskets, clothing, and nets. Impressions of woven patterns found on pottery fragments testify to their skill. These artifacts demonstrate not only technical ingenuity, but also an aesthetic unity, a sense that beauty was integral to functionality. Art for the Jōmon was never separate from life. It was woven into the fabric of existence, into the making of tools, the decoration of dwellings, and the rituals of community. The human form, especially the female figure, held special significance in Jōmon art. The enigmatic clay figurines known as dogu appear across the archipelago in countless variations. Some are stylized and abstract, others possess lifelike details. Many feature exaggerated hips, breasts, and bellies, symbols of fertility and motherhood. Their purpose remains a mystery, but they are often interpreted as representations of goddesses or spirits of abundance. Some dogu have large, almond-shaped eyes and intricate body patterns, leading a few researchers to call them goggle-eyed figures. The careful breaking and burial of these figurines suggests they were used in rituals of healing or renewal. Perhaps they embodied prayers for safe childbirth, good harvests, or protection from misfortune. Whatever their precise meaning, dogu stand as the most intimate expression of Jōmon spirituality, a bridge between the human and the divine, molded in the same clay that sustained their daily lives. The Jōmon's artistic language extended into architecture as well. Their pit dwellings, though humble, were constructed with an understanding of environmental balance. The use of earth insulation moderated temperature, while their circular layout fostered social cohesion. Some settlements featured large communal structures, raised floor buildings or longhouses, possibly used for storage, gatherings, or ceremonies. The spatial arrangement of these villages reveals an implicit social order. There is no evidence of kings or hierarchies in the Jōmon world. Instead, society seems to have been egalitarian, with leadership based on age, skill, or ritual authority rather than wealth or coercion. This absence of rigid stratification allowed for flexibility and shared responsibility. It also fostered an environment where creativity could flourish freely, unbound by social constraints.
Trade played a vital role in maintaining this cultural vitality. Despite the physical barriers of mountains and sea, the Jōmon established long-distance exchange networks that spanned the length of the Japanese islands and beyond. Obsidian from Hokkaido, shells from the Pacific coast, and jade from the Itoigawa region have been found hundreds of kilometers from their sources. These materials were not only practical, but symbolic, carrying spiritual value and reinforcing social bonds. Exchange was more than commerce, it was communion, an affirmation of shared identity among scattered communities. Through trade, ideas and styles circulated, enriching the cultural tapestry of Jōmon life. Regional variations in pottery design, for instance, show both local individuality and a broader aesthetic unity. This dynamic interplay of diversity and cohesion was one of the hallmarks of Jōmon innovation. Another profound aspect of Jōmon life was their relationship with time. Their world moved not in the linear progression of empires, but in the cyclical rhythms of nature. Seasonal ceremonies marked the passage of the year. Spring hunts, summer gatherings, autumn harvests, and winter feasts. These events reinforced communal bonds and affirmed humanity's place within the larger cosmos. Fire, in particular, played a central role in ritual life. Archaeological remains of hearths, fire pits, and burnt offerings indicate ceremonies of purification and renewal. The flame-style pottery itself may have been used in such rituals, embodying the power of transformation. For the Jōmon, fire was both a tool and a symbol, destructive yet creative, earthly yet divine. This deep connection to the environment also inspired remarkable ecological innovations. The Jōmon were among the first peoples to practice a form of environmental management now recognized as proto-agriculture. While they never developed large-scale farming, they actively tended their landscape. At sites like Sanai Maruyama, evidence shows that they selectively planted chestnut and nut-bearing trees near settlements, ensuring reliable food sources for generations. They also managed forest growth through controlled burning, promoting the spread of desirable plants and animals. This sustainable interaction with the land demonstrates a sophistication often overlooked in prehistoric societies. The Jōmon understood that their survival depended not on domination, but on partnership, a lesson as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. This deep connection to the environment also inspired remarkable ecological innovations. The Jōmon were among the first peoples to practice a form of environmental management now recognized as proto-agriculture. While they never developed large-scale farming, they actively tended their landscape. At sites like Sanai Maruyama, evidence shows that they selectively planted chestnut and nut-bearing trees near settlements, ensuring reliable food sources for generations. They also managed forest growth through controlled burning, promoting the spread of desirable plants and animals. This sustainable interaction with the land demonstrates a sophistication often overlooked in prehistoric societies. The Jōmon understood that their survival depended not on domination, but on partnership, a lesson as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. This deep connection to the environment also inspired remarkable ecological innovations.
The Jōmon were among the first peoples to practice a form of environmental management now recognized as proto-agriculture. While they never developed large-scale farming, they actively tended their landscape. At sites like Sanai Maruyama, evidence shows that they selectively planted chestnut and nut-bearing trees near settlements, ensuring reliable food sources for generations. They also managed forest growth through controlled burning, promoting the spread of desirable plants and animals. This sustainable interaction with the land demonstrates a sophistication often overlooked in prehistoric societies. The Jōmon understood that their survival depended not on domination, but on partnership, a lesson as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. The spiritual dimension of this lifestyle cannot be overstated. Every act, hunting, gathering, crafting, building, carried ritual significance. Archaeological evidence of stone circles, burial mounds, and ceremonial pits point to a cosmology deeply attuned to cycles of life and death. Burial practices varied across regions, but often included grave goods, pottery, beads, tools, and ornaments placed with the deceased. Such offerings suggest a belief in an afterlife or a spiritual journey beyond death. Some graves contain the remains of infants, accompanied by miniature dogu, perhaps symbols of protection in the next world. The repetition of these patterns across centuries indicates continuity of belief, a cultural memory that endured through countless generations. As the Jōmon civilization matured, so too did their understanding of identity and place. Artistic motifs grew more symbolic, representing forces rather than forms. Spirals, waves, and flame-like curves dominate their designs, reflecting water, fire, and motion, the elements that governed their world. These symbols, recurring across regions and eras, formed a visual language through which the Jōmon expressed their philosophy that all things are interconnected, that creation and destruction are part of the same eternal cycle. Their art was not about representation, but resonance, about capturing the essence of experience rather than its appearance.
In many ways, the Jōmon's greatest innovation was not technological but conceptual. They demonstrated that civilization need not be built upon agriculture, hierarchy, or warfare. It could instead arise from coexistence, creativity, and respect for nature's rhythm. Their settlements show no signs of fortifications, no evidence of large-scale conflict. Instead, they reveal a people content to live within their means, adapting gracefully to environmental change. This balance allowed their culture to endure for more than 10 millennia, an achievement unmatched by most later civilizations. The Jōmon remind us that sustainability and artistry can coexist, that progress is not always measured in monuments or conquest. In the quiet darkness of their forest homes, the Jōmon carved, painted, and shaped their world into something beautiful. They did not build empires, yet their legacy endures in every cord-marked shard and clay figurine. They left behind no written language, yet their art speaks eloquently of who they were. Their daily lives were imbued with reverence for fire, for water, for the soil beneath their feet. In every gesture of creation, they reaffirmed their bond with the land that sustained them. When modern archaeologists unearth a Jōmon pot or dogu, they are not merely uncovering artifacts, they are touching the heartbeat of a civilization that understood the art of living. The textures pressed into clay by ancient hands carry the memory of a people who saw beauty in necessity, who turned survival into expression. Their world was one of profound interconnection, where innovation arose from observation and art was inseparable from life itself.
As the sun set over the ancient archipelago of Japan, painting the sea in hues of crimson and gold, the Jōmon people looked toward the horizon not merely with eyes of survival, but of reverence. To them, every element of nature, the whispering wind through cedar forests, the rhythmic tides along rocky shores, the glimmering stars that marked the passage of time, was alive with spirit. Their world was one in which the boundaries between the human and the divine dissolved into a seamless continuum. The Jōmon did not build temples of stone or carve deities into towering idols. Their faith was woven into the fabric of the living world itself. Belief for them was not an institution, but a relationship, a dialogue between the seen and unseen, between the earth that nourished them and the cosmos that surrounded them. To understand Jōmon spirituality, one must first understand their environment. The Japanese archipelago, even today, is a landscape that inspires awe. Volcanic peaks cloaked in mist, dense forests that seem to breathe, rivers that pulse with life, and a coastline that stretches endlessly, shifting with each tide. The Jōmon lived within this landscape as both participants and observers. Their rituals and myths were born from the rhythms of their surroundings, the cycle of the seasons, the fertility of the land, the bounty of the sea. Every hunt, every harvest, every birth and death was part of a sacred continuum. This worldview is what modern scholars refer to as animism, the belief that all things possess a spirit or life force. But for the Jōmon, it was not a belief system, it was reality itself. Evidence of this spiritual vision can be found throughout the archaeological record. Across the islands from Hokkaido to Kyushu, archaeologists have uncovered stone circles, ceremonial pits, and clay figurines that reveal a deep concern with ritual and symbolism. At the site of Oya in Akita Prefecture, two massive stone circles, each more than 40 meters in diameter, stand as silent witnesses to the Jōmon's sacred gatherings. Built from river stones, carefully arranged in concentric patterns, these circles were not defensive structures or dwellings. Their orientation toward the solstices suggest a cosmic purpose, perhaps observatories marking the sun's passage or sanctuaries for communal ceremonies tied to the cycles of nature. Around these circles, archaeologists have found hearths, offerings, and post holes that hint at wooden structures now long vanished. Here, under the open sky, the Jōmon may have danced, prayed, and shared in the mysteries of the cosmos. At the heart of Jōmon ritual life stood the enigmatic clay figures known as dogu. These small, often intricately crafted figures are among the most iconic symbols of the Jōmon world. Thousands have been discovered across Japan, varying in form from region to region, but united by a common sense of sacred purpose. Some are round and robust, with exaggerated hips and breasts, suggesting fertility and motherhood. Others are slender, abstract, almost alien in appearance. Their large eyes and patterned bodies evoke otherworldly beings. Many of these figurines were deliberately broken and buried, suggesting ritual use. Some scholars interpret this as a form of symbolic death or release. Perhaps the figurine absorbed illness, misfortune, or spiritual impurity, which was then shattered to set the spirit free. In this way, dogu served not as idols to be worshipped, but as vessels of transformation, mediators between the human and the divine.
The act of creating a dogu itself may have been part of the ritual process. Just as pottery embodied the elemental power of earth and fire, so too did these figures embody the sacred act of shaping life. The clay was drawn from the same soil that sustained crops and animals. When fired, it became something enduring yet fragile, a metaphor for human existence. The patterns carved into dogu bodies, spirals, dots, crosshatches, may have represented tattoos, clothing, or even spiritual markings. Some figures appear pregnant, others armored, some serene, others fierce.
Each one carries a distinct personality, as though they were not generic symbols but individual spirits, each with a unique role in the cosmic order. Together, they form a silent pantheon of the Jōmon imagination, a reflection of a world where divinity was everywhere and every object could be sacred. But the spiritual life of the Jōmon was not confined to small figurines. Their relationship with the natural world was expressed through ritual practices that touched every aspect of existence. Burial customs, for instance, reveal an enduring concern with the afterlife. Jōmon graves vary from simple pits to elaborate stone chambers, often containing offerings of pottery, tools, beads, and food. The care given to these burials suggests a belief that life continued beyond death. Some skeletons were placed in flexed positions, as though sleeping, while others were adorned with shell jewelry or surrounded by symbolic items. Infants, especially, were sometimes buried in jars, perhaps to protect their souls or return them to the womb of the earth. These practices hint at a profound reverence for the cycle of birth, death, and renewal. The dead were not forgotten. They remained part of the community, their spirits honored and consulted through ritual. One of the most striking features of Jōmon spirituality is the absence of hierarchy. Unlike later societies where priests or shamans controlled access to the divine, Jōmon religious life appears to have been communal. Ritual spaces were shared, ceremonies collective, and sacred knowledge likely passed through families and clans rather than centralized authority. This egalitarian spirituality mirrored their social organization, decentralized, cooperative, and deeply integrated with daily life. Spirituality was not a separate sphere, but a thread woven through every action, from fishing to childbirth. The boundaries between the sacred and the mundane simply did not exist. At the same time, certain individuals may have held special roles as mediators between the human and spiritual worlds. Archaeologists have found grave goods suggesting elevated status, elaborate ornaments, rare materials, or ritual items, which may indicate shamanic figures. These shamans, possibly female, would have acted as healers, diviners, and spiritual guides. Their rituals might have involved drumming, dancing, or trance states, evoking the spirits of animals, ancestors, or natural forces. In Jōmon cosmology, everything was interconnected. The flight of a bird, the rustle of leaves, the movement of stars, all carried meaning. To interpret these signs was the task of the spiritual specialist, who bridged the worlds of matter and spirit. Such figures would later find echoes in Japanese folklore, in the Miko priestesses and shamans who continued to mediate between the human and divine, even in modern Shinto practice.
The Jōmon worldview was not built on written scripture, but on observation and participation. Their myths were likely transmitted orally, stories told by firelight, songs sung during harvest, dances performed under the moon. These narratives explained the forces of nature and humanity's place within them. Though we cannot reconstruct their exact myths, we can glimpse their essence through symbolism. The spiral, common in Jōmon art, may have represented the flow of life and time, the turning of seasons, the cycles of death and rebirth. The flame motifs on pottery echo fire's dual nature, both life-giving and destructive. The use of water imagery, seen in wave patterns and undulating forms, evokes the sea's eternal rhythm. These recurring symbols suggest a cosmology of balance and transformation, a world in constant motion, yet harmonious in its cycles. At certain sites, archaeologists have found evidence of ritual feasting, large gatherings where food, drink, and song brought communities together. Pits filled with burnt bones, pottery shards, and stones bear witness to ceremonies of offering and renewal. Perhaps these were moments when the boundary between the human and spiritual worlds thinned, when the community reaffirmed its bond with the forces that sustained it. Fire played a central role in such rituals. The hearth was not only a practical tool, but a sacred space, a miniature cosmos where the elements met. In the flames, the Jōmon saw the breath of life itself, the eternal dance between destruction and creation. Each spark, each ember was a prayer in motion. Rituals of purification also held deep importance. The Japanese reverence for cleanliness and purity, still evident in Shinto practices today, may trace its roots to the Jōmon era. Water, in particular, was considered a cleansing force. Rivers and springs were places of renewal where the body and spirit could be restored. The frequent discovery of artifacts near water sources suggests that rituals were performed there, offerings made to the spirits of rivers and seas. In a land shaped by earthquakes, volcanoes, and storms, such rituals were both practical and spiritual, expressing gratitude and seeking harmony with the unpredictable forces of nature. As centuries passed, Jōmon spirituality evolved, but never lost its animistic essence. Even as new tools and ideas arrived from the Asian mainland, the people continued to honor their ancient relationship with the land. They adapted to changing climates and shifting resources without abandoning their reverence for life's interconnectedness. When the Yayoi culture eventually introduced rice farming, metal tools, and social hierarchies, the spiritual undercurrents of Jōmon life flowed quietly beneath the surface, merging into what would later become Shinto, Japan's indigenous faith. The Shinto concept of kami, spirits or deities inhabiting natural phenomena, echoes Jōmon animism almost perfectly. The worship of mountains, trees, and rivers, the use of ritual purification, and the celebration of seasonal festivals all bear the imprint of Jōmon heritage.
This continuity reminds us that the Jōmon worldview was not a primitive superstition, but a profound philosophy of coexistence. It taught that humanity is not separate from nature, but part of its eternal cycle. To cut a tree was to ask permission of its spirit. To hunt an animal was to honor its sacrifice. Gratitude, respect, and balance were the guiding principles of life. In a modern world driven by consumption and control, the Jōmon perspective offers a poignant counterpoint, a reminder of what it means to live in harmony rather than dominance. Archaeological discoveries continue to deepen our understanding of this spiritual dimension. At the Sannai Maruyama site, large wooden posts once formed a towering structure, possibly a shrine or observatory. The alignment of these posts with solar and lunar cycles suggests ritual significance, perhaps ceremonies marking the seasons. At other sites, stone tools and pottery have been found deliberately buried in patterns, as if to return them to the earth. These acts of offering reveal a spiritual logic of reciprocity, a belief that what is taken must be given back, that balance must always be restored. Such rituals reveal a sensitivity to the unseen forces that governed their world, forces the Jōmon did not seek to control, but to harmonize with. It is this harmony that defines Jōmon spirituality more than any artifact or monument. For them, divinity was not distant or abstract, it was present in the rustle of leaves, the sparkle of dew, the birth of a child, the flow of a river. Their rituals were acts of participation in a cosmic dance, gestures of gratitude, humility, and wonder. This worldview fostered resilience, allowing them to endure the environmental challenges of their time without succumbing to exploitation or despair. It also nurtured creativity, for when the world itself is sacred, every act of making becomes a form of prayer. In many ways, the Jōmon understanding of the sacred anticipated the philosophies that would later define Japanese aesthetics and spirituality. The appreciation of impermanence seen in wabi-sabi, the respect for natural forms in art and architecture, the meditative stillness of tea ceremonies and garden design, all these trace faint echoes to a prehistoric sensibility that saw beauty in transience and sanctity in simplicity. The Jōmon did not leave behind written doctrines, yet their worldview continues to shape Japanese culture in subtle, enduring ways. As we stand today before the remnants of their stone circles, their clay figurines, their cord-marked pottery, we are not simply looking at relics of the past, we are looking into a mirror, one that reflects humanity's oldest question: what does it mean to belong to this world? The Jōmon answered not with conquest or theology, but with reverence.
They believed that to live was to be in relation with the land, the ancestors, the unseen spirits that inhabit every breeze and ripple. Their spirituality was not a means to transcend the world, but a way to dwell within it fully, consciously, and gratefully. As night falls once more over the forests of ancient Japan, we can almost imagine the flicker of firelight in a Jōmon village, the sound of drums echoing through the dark, the murmur of voices offering thanks to the spirits of earth and sky. The scent of smoke mingles with the sea breeze, carrying prayers to the stars. In that moment, the distance of thousands of years dissolves, and we stand alongside them, human to human, soul to soul, remembering that the sacred has always been near, waiting only for us to see.
The story of the Jōmon people, once shrouded in the mists of prehistory, has been brought into the light not through written records or grand monuments, but through the meticulous work of archaeologists who have pieced together fragments of clay, bone, and stone. Each excavation offers a portal into a world that flourished for nearly 10 millennia, a civilization that left no cities, no palaces, no inscriptions, yet speaks eloquently through the artifacts and landscapes it shaped. The study of Jōmon archaeology is as much a journey of discovery as it is a confrontation with mystery. The sites themselves, scattered across the Japanese archipelago, present both tangible evidence of daily life and enigmatic questions that may never be fully answered. The history of Jōmon archaeology began in earnest in the late 19th century, when Western scholars first examined shell mounds along the coast of Tokyo. Edward Sylvester Morse, an American zoologist, is credited with the first significant excavation at Omori in 1877. His discovery of cord-marked pottery challenged prevailing notions of human prehistory. Up until then, the idea of such sophisticated pottery in a hunter-gatherer society was inconceivable. Morse meticulously documented the layers of shell, fish bones, and pottery fragments, revealing a community that had lived in relative permanence for centuries. This early work laid the foundation for modern understanding of Jōmon culture and sparked a wave of research that continues to this day. Over the decades, numerous Jōmon sites have been excavated, revealing a civilization both intricate and widespread. The Sanai Maruyama site in Aomori Prefecture is perhaps the most remarkable of these. Covering an area of more than 40 hectares, it represents one of the largest known Jōmon settlements, occupied from approximately 3900 to 2300 BCE. Excavations there have uncovered pit dwellings, raised floor structures, storage pits, and communal spaces, providing a window into the social organization and architectural sophistication of the time. The sheer scale of the site challenges earlier assumptions that Jōmon communities were small, isolated bands. Instead, evidence points to a networked society capable of sustaining large populations through meticulous resource management and seasonal planning. The architecture of these settlements is a testimony to Jōmon ingenuity. Pit dwellings, often circular or oval, were dug into the earth to provide insulation against both winter cold and summer heat. Their wooden frameworks supported thatched roofs, sometimes reinforced with layers of bark or reeds. Raised floor buildings, thought to be used for storage or ceremonial purposes, elevated grain, nuts, or ritual objects above the damp ground. The careful placement of homes and communal spaces suggests an awareness of social cohesion and ritual significance. Archaeologists have noted that certain structures appear to have been aligned with solar or lunar cycles, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and its integration into daily and spiritual life.
Pottery continues to be among the most revealing artifacts of Jōmon archaeology. From the earliest cord-marked vessels to the flamboyant flame-style pots of the Middle Jōmon period, each piece carries information about function, status, and artistic expression. Scientific analysis of clay composition and firing techniques demonstrates that the Jōmon were highly skilled craftsmen, capable of producing durable, heat-resistant pottery using locally sourced materials. Residue analysis has revealed the contents of these pots: acorns, chestnuts, fish, and other staples, providing detailed insights into diet and seasonal consumption. Some pottery fragments even bear intricate patterns that may have held symbolic or ritual meaning, reflecting the interplay between practical utility and spiritual expression.
The enigmatic Dogu figurines remain among the most compelling and mysterious of Jōmon artifacts. Found across the archipelago, these figurines vary in form, size, and complexity, yet share common features: exaggerated anatomical traits, elaborate patterns, and deliberate fractures in some cases. The purpose of these objects continues to intrigue researchers. Some suggest that dogu were used in fertility rituals. Others propose that they served as talismans to protect against illness or misfortune. The deliberate breaking of many figurines before burial implies ritual activation or symbolic sacrifice, but the exact meaning is lost to time. Despite decades of study, no definitive explanation has emerged, leaving these artifacts as enduring symbols of the mystery and complexity of Jōmon spirituality. The material culture of the Jōmon extends beyond pottery and figurines. Stone tools, polished axes, obsidian blades, and bone implements illustrate a sophisticated understanding of materials and techniques. Obsidian, sourced from specific regions such as Hokkaido and Nagano, has been found hundreds of kilometers away, indicating extensive trade networks. Shell ornaments, jade beads, and bone carvings suggest an appreciation for aesthetic beauty and symbolic value. Even the methods used to shape and polish these tools reveal careful planning and skill. The Jōmon did not simply use materials available to them, they manipulated them in ways that reflect observation, experimentation, and creative problem-solving. One of the enduring mysteries of Jōmon archaeology is the evidence of long-term environmental management. Sites such as Sonnai Maruyama and Torihama show that the Jōmon cultivated wild plants, selectively burned forests to encourage the growth of edible species, and managed nut-bearing trees for future harvests. These practices represent an early form of sustainable resource management, predating formal agriculture by thousands of years. Yet the Jōmon never fully transitioned into farming. They maintained a balance between gathering, hunting, and limited horticulture, a lifestyle that allowed them to thrive for millennia without exhausting their environment. Understanding this delicate equilibrium challenges conventional narratives of civilization and raises profound questions about human adaptability and ecological wisdom. Burial practices provide another window into Jōmon life and beliefs. Graves range from simple pits to elaborate stone-lined chambers, often accompanied by offerings of pottery, tools, and ornaments. Some sites contain multiple burials, indicating familial or communal tombs. Infant burials, sometimes placed in large ceramic jars, suggest special care for the young and an awareness of life's fragility. Certain burials show evidence of social differentiation, with some individuals interred with rare materials or elaborate grave goods, hinting at ritual or spiritual roles within the community. Yet overall, the Jōmon appear remarkably egalitarian compared to later societies. Social hierarchy seems to have been minimal, with spiritual and communal bonds taking precedence over rigid stratification.
Despite these insights, much about the Jōmon remains a mystery. The abrupt emergence of flame-style pottery, the meaning behind dogu, and the reasons for the eventual decline of Jōmon culture continue to puzzle scholars. The transition to the Yayoi period, beginning around 300 BCE, brought rice agriculture, metal tools, and new social hierarchies. Whether this transition occurred through migration, cultural diffusion, or a combination of both remains debated. Archaeological evidence suggests some degree of assimilation, with Jōmon communities adopting new practices while maintaining elements of their traditional culture. Yet the precise mechanisms of cultural change are elusive, leaving gaps in the narrative that modern archaeology strives to fill. Technological advances have revolutionized Jōmon research in recent decades. Carbon radiodating allows precise determination of occupation layers, while DNA analysis sheds light on population movements and genetic continuity. Stable isotope analysis provides detailed reconstructions of diet and migration, revealing patterns of mobility and resource use. Remote sensing and geophysical surveys uncover hidden settlements without disturbing delicate sites, while 3D modeling enables reconstruction of dwellings, artifacts, and ceremonial spaces. These tools have transformed our understanding of the Jōmon from scattered hunter-gatherers to a sophisticated, interconnected culture with enduring influence on Japanese identity.
Archaeology has also highlighted the regional diversity of Jōmon culture. Sites in Hokkaido, northern Honshu, and Kyushu exhibit differences in pottery style, settlement layout, and ritual practice. Coastal communities relied heavily on marine resources and shellfish, producing middens of remarkable size, while inland groups focused on hunting and forest management. These variations suggest adaptive strategies tailored to local environments, as well as cultural exchange and interaction across the archipelago. Trade and communication networks allowed ideas, materials, and symbolic motifs to spread, creating both unity and diversity within the Jōmon world. Perhaps the most profound mystery of the Jōmon lies not in what has been found, but in what may never be recovered. Their language, spiritual beliefs, and oral narratives have vanished without a trace. Unlike contemporaneous civilizations elsewhere, they left no written records. Artifacts provide tantalizing clues, but cannot fully convey the richness of thought, emotion, or experience. Archaeologists are left to interpret material remains with care, combining scientific analysis with informed speculation. Each excavation becomes an act of reconstruction, an attempt to breathe life into a world that has been silent for thousands of years. Yet even in silence, the Jōmon speak to us. Their cord-marked pottery conveys a tactile connection to human hands across time. Their stone tools reflect ingenuity and resourcefulness. Their dogu embodies spiritual reflection and communal belief. The careful organization of settlements demonstrates social cohesion and environmental awareness. Collectively, these discoveries reveal a civilization that thrived in harmony with its surroundings, expressing creativity, spirituality, and practicality in equal measure. They remind us that human complexity is not confined to written records or monumental architecture. It can emerge through observation, adaptation, and artistic expression.
Modern archaeological efforts continue to uncover new dimensions of the Jōmon world. Sites such as the Futatsumori Shell Midden and the Yokota site have provided fresh insights into diet, trade, and ritual. Waterlogged sites in particular preserve wooden artifacts, textiles, and plant remains, offering a glimpse into aspects of daily life previously lost to decay. Advanced imaging techniques reveal hidden structures beneath the soil, while residue analysis uncovers culinary practices and plant use. Each new discovery adds layers to our understanding, yet also raises further questions, deepening the sense of mystery surrounding this ancient civilization. The Jōmon's enduring allure lies in the interplay between discovery and uncertainty. Archaeology reveals their sophistication, artistry, and adaptability, yet much remains enigmatic. Why did the Jōmon sustain such a stable and creative society for millennia without adopting large-scale agriculture? What prompted the abrupt emergence of certain artistic styles, such as the flame-style pottery? How did they maintain social cohesion without centralized authority? These unanswered questions are part of the fascination of Jōmon studies, reminding us that history is both evidence and imagination, fact and interpretation. In the shards of pottery, the impressions of cords, and the silent gaze of dogu, we encounter a civilization that defies conventional categories, a society that flourished through balance, creativity, and reverence for the world around them. In reflecting on these discoveries, we recognize that Jōmon archaeology is not merely about the past, it is a dialogue with human potential. The Jōmon demonstrate that complexity, spirituality, and sustainability can coexist. Their innovations in pottery, settlement planning, and resource management predate similar developments elsewhere, challenging assumptions about the pathways of civilization. The mysteries that remain, their exact beliefs, the full significance of their art, the reasons for their transformation into the Yayoi period, invite us to approach history with humility and curiosity. In the shards of pottery, the impressions of cords, and the silent gaze of dogu, we encounter a civilization that defies conventional categories, a society that flourished through balance, creativity, and reverence for the world around them. Archaeology continues to illuminate the Jōmon's place in the broader tapestry of human history. Each site, each artifact, and each layer of sediment adds detail to a civilization that thrived long before written records or monumental empires.
The meticulous work of archaeologists, combining careful excavation, scientific analysis, and interpretive insight, transforms fragments into narrative, silence into voice. And yet, for all we uncover, the Jōmon retain an aura of mystery. They are a civilization both known and unknowable, tangible and ethereal, a reminder that human history is as much about wonder as it is about evidence. As the final shovels of earth are lifted and artifacts cataloged, we are left with a profound sense of connection to the Jōmon people. Their settlements, tools, pottery, and figurines are not relics of a distant past, but bridges across time, linking us to a way of life rooted in creativity, spirituality, and balance with the environment around them. In every archaeological discovery, we glimpse the heartbeat of a civilization that, though long gone, continues to speak to the human imagination.
As the Jōmon period drew to a close around 300 BCE, the Japanese archipelago underwent profound transformations. The arrival of the Yayoi culture, with rice cultivation, metallurgy, and hierarchical social structures, marked the beginning of a new era. Yet, despite this transition, the legacy of the Jōmon civilization endured. Subtle, pervasive, and enduring. It was not written in the annals of history or the rise of cities, but in the art, spirituality, and ecological wisdom that would shape the cultural and environmental ethos of Japan for millennia. To trace the legacy of the Jōmon is to follow the threads of creativity, resilience, and balance that continue to inform the Japanese sense of identity, aesthetics, and relationship with nature. One of the most visible legacies of the Jōmon lies in the continuity of spiritual sensibilities. The animistic worldview of the Jōmon, the belief that natural objects and phenomena possess a spirit, is mirrored in Shinto, Japan's indigenous religion. The kami, divine spirits inhabiting mountains, rivers, trees, and other natural features, reflect the same reverence for the living world that permeated Jōmon life. Ritual purification, seasonal festivals, and sacred sites embedded in the natural landscape can be seen as direct descendants of Jōmon's ceremonial practices. Even the modern Japanese appreciation for harmony between human activity and nature, a principle central to traditional architecture, gardening, and art, resonates with the Jōmon ethos of coexistence. The sacred was not distant or abstract, it was present in the forest, the river, and the hearth, a philosophy that endures to this day. Artistic heritage also forms a profound aspect of the Jōmon legacy. The cord-marked pottery, flame-style vessels, and dogu figurines were not merely practical or decorative. They embodied a philosophy in which beauty and function were inseparable. This integration of aesthetic awareness with everyday life echoes in subsequent Japanese art forms, from ceramics and lacquerware to textile design and garden layout. The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, an aesthetic that finds beauty in imperfection, impermanence, and simplicity, shares philosophical resonance with Jōmon sensibilities. The textured surfaces of Jōmon pottery, the asymmetrical curves of flame-style vessels, and the expressive forms of dogu all anticipate an appreciation for natural materials and organic forms that would define Japanese artistic culture for centuries. The Jōmon people did not merely make objects, they created experiences. Sensory encounters that integrated tactile, visual, and symbolic meaning. This integration remains central to Japanese artistic traditions today. The Jōmon's ecological awareness and resource management also left an enduring mark. Their sustainable practices, tending nut-bearing trees, managing forests through controlled burns, fishing and hunting with restraint, prefigure principles of environmental stewardship that modern societies still strive to emulate. By living in harmony with seasonal cycles and maintaining balance in resource use, the Jōmon demonstrated that human societies could thrive without exploiting the environment. This legacy extends beyond philosophy into practical application.
Traditional Japanese agricultural and forest management practices, including the use of coppicing, rotational harvesting, and pond cultivation, bear echoes of Jōmon strategies. Their model challenges contemporary assumptions that large-scale agriculture and urban development are the only paths to societal complexity. The Jōmon remind us that longevity, resilience, and creativity can emerge from ecological harmony as much as from technological conquest.
Archaeological discoveries have further reinforced the Jōmon legacy by providing a tangible link to human ingenuity and adaptation. Sites like Sonnai Maruyama, Oyu, and Futatsu-mori shell midden reveal a culture capable of sustaining large communities, producing complex art, and negotiating a landscape of diverse environments over millennia. These discoveries illustrate that the Jōmon were not primitive, marginal peoples, but sophisticated actors in their world. Their innovations in pottery, tool-making, settlement design, and ritual practice challenge linear narratives of civilization and demonstrate that societal complexity can manifest in diverse forms. The Jōmon legacy is thus both intellectual and material, an enduring lesson in the diversity of human achievement. Education and scholarship continue to expand understanding of this legacy. Advances in archaeological science, radiocarbon dating, DNA analysis, isotopic studies, and remote sensing allow researchers to reconstruct the lives, diets, and movements of Jōmon peoples with unprecedented precision. Each new finding reinforces the narrative of resilience, creativity, and spirituality, while also revealing the complexities and regional variations that characterize Jōmon culture. As these discoveries reach broader audiences through museums, documentaries, and academic publications, the Jōmon story enriches both Japanese national identity and global understanding of human prehistory. The civilization's endurance over 10 millennia remains a source of inspiration and inquiry, demonstrating that long-term adaptation and cultural expression are hallmarks of human intelligence. Cultural memory, too, bears the imprint of the Jōmon. Folklore, oral traditions, and even contemporary festivals may contain echoes of prehistoric practices. While direct transmission cannot be traced definitively, motifs in ritual practice, symbolic use of fire and water, and the celebration of seasonal cycles suggest continuity with Jōmon sensibilities. Artistic and symbolic forms, spirals, concentric circles, and naturalistic depictions appear in later Japanese art, ritual objects, and sacred sites. Even the reverence for natural phenomena, such as mountains, waterfalls, and groves, can be seen as a spiritual inheritance from the Jōmon worldview. This cultural resonance highlights the profound depth of their influence, extending far beyond the physical artifacts left behind. Perhaps the most profound aspect of the Jōmon legacy lies in its challenge to conventional ideas of civilization. For thousands of years, the Jōmon maintained a stable, thriving culture without centralized political structures, urban centers, or intensive agriculture. They demonstrated that creativity, social cohesion, and technological innovation could flourish under egalitarian systems. Their success was measured not in conquest or monumental construction, but in sustainability, artistic achievement, and spiritual fulfillment. In doing so, they offer a counter-narrative to the dominant models of human progress, reminding us that complexity and longevity can emerge from harmony, not domination. The modern Japanese awareness of the Jōmon period has grown substantially since the mid-20th century, fueled by archaeological research, preservation of key sites, and public engagement through museums and media. The designation of Sonnai Maruyama and other sites as national heritage landmarks has ensured protection and study, while exhibitions of pottery, figurines, and tools allow contemporary audiences to appreciate the artistry and innovation of the Jōmon people. Documentaries, books, and academic conferences continue to explore the richness of their civilization, emphasizing its relevance to discussions of cultural identity, environmental stewardship, and artistic heritage. In this way, the Jōmon legacy bridges the ancient and modern worlds, demonstrating continuity of human values and creativity across millennia.
Scientific study has also revealed the Jōmon's genetic and anthropological significance. DNA analysis of skeletal remains indicates both continuity and interaction with subsequent populations, linking the Jōmon to later Japanese groups. These studies contribute not only to understanding the biological history of the archipelago, but also to tracing the movement of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. The insights gained from these analyses underscore the Jōmon's role as a foundational element of Japan's prehistory, a population whose endurance and adaptability shaped the archipelago's cultural and ecological trajectories. Beyond Japan, the Jōmon have contributed to global understanding of hunter-gatherer societies and human innovation. They challenge assumptions about the simplicity of prehistoric life, demonstrating that non-agricultural communities could sustain complex social structures, create sophisticated art, and engage in ritual life over thousands of years. Comparative studies with other prehistoric cultures reveal parallels in environmental management, artistic expression, and spiritual practice, highlighting the universality of human ingenuity. In this context, the Jōmon civilization is not an isolated curiosity, but a vital chapter in the story of human adaptation and creativity. The physical remnants of the Jōmon, from pit dwellings to pottery shards, from dogu figurines to stone tools, continue to captivate archaeologists, artists, and the public alike. Each artifact represents a dialogue across time, offering insight into the ingenuity, spirituality, and resilience of a people who thrived in harmony with their environment. Museums and exhibitions around Japan display these treasures, inviting reflection on the relationship between humans and nature, the role of art in society, and the enduring relevance of prehistoric wisdom. By engaging with these artifacts, we not only reconstruct history, but also reconnect with fundamental human questions about purpose, creativity, and coexistence. The Jōmon legacy is also present in the landscape itself. Ancient settlements, shell middens, and ritual sites reveal patterns of land use, resource management, and spatial organization that continue to inform environmental and archaeological studies. The careful selection of settlement locations near rivers, coasts, and fertile valleys demonstrates sophisticated knowledge of ecology and sustainable planning. The arrangement of dwellings, communal spaces, and ritual areas reflects social cohesion, ceremonial practice, and environmental integration. This spatial legacy serves as a model for understanding human-environment interactions and the potential for long-term sustainability in prehistoric societies. In reflecting on the Jōmon's enduring influence, we recognize that their civilization was not ephemeral, but transformative. Though it predates written history and large-scale agriculture, the Jōmon culture achieved a depth and complexity that resonates through time. Their artistic sensibilities, spiritual beliefs, environmental stewardship, and social organization continue to inform Japanese identity and inspire global scholarship. By studying their achievements and mysteries, we gain insight into alternative models of human flourishing, societies defined not by conquest, but by creativity, balance, and reverence.
Ultimately, the legacy of the Jōmon civilization is a testament to the enduring capacity of human beings to adapt, innovate, and create meaning in harmony with the natural world. It reminds us that complexity is not confined to cities and empires, that art can emerge from necessity, and that spirituality can be woven into daily existence without formal institutions. In the cord-marked pottery, in the intricate dogu, in the carefully managed forests and settlements, we see a civilization that valued continuity, creativity, and coexistence. The Jōmon people may have vanished as a distinct culture thousands of years ago, but their influence persists, not only in the soil and artifacts of Japan, but in the principles of life they embodied, principles that continue to inspire reflection, study, and admiration today. As the sun sets across the archipelago, casting golden light on ancient sites and verdant forests, we are reminded that history is not merely the record of kings and empires, but also the story of ordinary people who lived with intention, creativity, and reverence. The Jōmon civilization stands as a luminous example of this truth. Through their art, spirituality, and sustainable practices, they offer a vision of humanity in balance with nature, a reminder that the past has lessons for the present and guidance for the future. In celebrating the Jōmon, we celebrate not only the ingenuity of a people long gone, but the enduring capacity of humans to live meaningfully, creatively, and harmoniously within the world around them.